Did you know the most relatable movie about hating your job was made by a guy who genuinely hated his job, and that the studio almost killed it anyway? Office Space landed in theaters in February 1999 and turned corporate misery into the most quotable comedy of its generation. Ron Livingston led as Peter Gibbons, a programmer so checked out he invented quiet quitting 20 years before anyone had a name for it. Gary Cole was Lumbergh, the passive-aggressive boss whose slow, airless drawl could make a request for a stapler feel like a threat, and whose coffee mug never left his hand. Stephen Root was Milton, a man who mumbled dark promises into his own collar while the rest of the office pretended he didn't exist, and who absolutely should have been taken more seriously. Jennifer Aniston was Joanna, a waitress who'd been asked one too many times about her flair, and David Herman played Michael Bolton. And no, not that Michael Bolton, which was, in fact, the whole problem. Mike Judge wrote and directed it, his first live-action film. It cost $10 million. The studio declared it a failure before the ink on the receipts dried. Then something happened. Today we're climbing back into Initech for 15 wild facts you didn't know about Office Space. The animated cartoons that started the whole thing, the man who got himself fired to land the role, and the real-life crime that proved someone watched this film very, very carefully. Before we get into it, hit like and subscribe so you never miss a deep dive into the shows that shaped us. Let's get into the countdown with number 15. Number 15, Fox wanted a movie called Milton. They got a better film instead. Here's the pitch Fox thought they were making: a feature film built around Milton, the mumbling, put-upon office drone from Mike Judge's animated shorts. Logical. The character had an audience. The studio had a development deal with Judge. The path was obvious. Judge said no. He didn't want a Milton movie. He wanted an ensemble, something wider, something that captured the whole ecosystem of office life. The studio suggested he make something like Car Wash, but set in an office. Judge ignored that and delivered a film where the character Fox, greenlit the project over, gets demoted to a supporting role. Milton ends up in the basement with cockroaches, speaks maybe 100 words total, and burns the building down on the way out. Here's the detail that makes it sharper. The real Milton, the animated character, was himself based on a specific real person. A co-worker of Judge's in Silicon Valley who kept threatening to quit if the company moved his desk again. Judge's response to the studio when they pushed him to build the whole film around that character: "You don't want to know what he does at home after work," which, as an argument for keeping Milton in the background, is pretty much airtight. The Milton shorts first aired on MTV's Liquid Television in 1991. 3 more ran on Saturday Night Live during the 1993-94 season. By the time Fox came calling, Judge had a character, a world, and a very clear idea of what the film should not be. Fox wanted a star. They got a more interesting film instead. Number 14. The studio made a poster that Judge compared to a beekeeper. Fox's marketing team looked at Office Space, a film about corporate tone deafness, and produced with total sincerity one of the most tone-deaf film posters in modern comedy history. The original one-sheet for Office Space didn't feature Ron Livingston, didn't feature Jennifer Aniston, didn't feature Milton or Lumbergh, or a single character anyone in the film actually played. It was a random man covered head to toe in Post-it notes with the tagline, "Work sucks." Judge saw it and said, people were like, "What is this? A big bird? A mummy? A beekeeper?" And the tagline, "Work sucks," it looked like an Office Depot ad. I just hated it. The trailers weren't better. The TV spots weren't better. Fox chairman Tom Rothman later admitted, "Office Space isn't like American Pie. It doesn't have the kind of jokes you put in a 15-second television spot of somebody getting hit on the head with a frying pan. It's sly, and let me tell you, sly is hard to sell." To drive home the point, they also stationed a man in a plexiglass cube above Times Square for 5 days, broadcast live on the internet so people could watch him answer calls and emails from workers dissatisfied with their jobs. The film bombed. On the DVD release, Judge got the cover redesigned, Milton peeking out from behind the Post-it man. Fans recognized it immediately. A small act of revenge that cost nothing and communicated everything the original marketing had missed. The character Fox told him to sideline turned out to be the one image that actually sold the movie. Number 13. Fox wanted Matt Damon. Then they told the lead actor to fast until Friday. After Good Will Hunting in 1997, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were the hottest names in Hollywood. Fox, staring at a $10 million comedy about cubicle workers with no stars attached, had one response: get one of them. Judge met Damon at a pizzeria in New York at 11 in the morning. Damon was polite, said the script could be good, and passed. Affleck wanted $2 million for a $10 million movie. Judge later called that hilarious, mostly because the studio had already put him through multiple screen tests with other actors before anyone thought to ask what Affleck's fee was. The Lawrence auditions were their own story. Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn both read for Peter's next-door neighbor, the role Diedrich Bader eventually owned with the mullet and the philosophy about two chicks at the same time. Meanwhile, casting director Nancy Klopper had put Ron Livingston on tape. Judge watched it and immediately knew. The studio did not. They asked Livingston to screen test officially. Then the call came on a Tuesday. The studio wanted to know if he could fast until the screen test on Friday. He laughed, assumed it was a joke, was told it wasn't. He told them he'd try. He jumped rope for 15 minutes, ordered deep-fried meat at a Tex-Mex dinner, and gave up fasting the next day. He got the part. What the studio couldn't see was that Livingston was playing Peter as a man who thought he was lucky to have the job, not someone who knew he deserved better. That gap is where every laugh in the movie lives. Number 12, David Herman got himself fired to get the role. Mike Judge wrote the role of Michael Bolton, the programmer with the catastrophically inconvenient name, with one specific actor in mind, David Herman, who he knew from voice work on King of the Hill. Herman was an original cast member on Mad TV, locked into a 7-year contract. Fox would not let him out of it. So Herman showed up at the next Mad TV table, read, sat down, and screamed every single line at the top of his lungs. He was fired. He was available by the following morning. Once free of the contract, he delivered what might be the funniest improvised line in the film. The original script had Bolton call the famous singer something that legally implied he didn't sing his own songs. The crew flagged the defamation risk. Herman sat with it, and had heard his girlfriend use a particular word the night before. He came back with the compound insult that entered the language and hasn't left in 25 years. Merriam-Webster added it officially in September 2023, tracing its first known use to the film. Herman's response: he'd never met the real Michael Bolton. I always heard from Mike his reaction was something like a groan when the movie is brought up. I used to say, I feel both Michael Boltons have suffered enough. Getting yourself fired by screaming all your lines until someone makes you stop is exactly what Michael Bolton would do. Herman played the character before he had the part. Number 11, Gary Cole watched a cartoon and copied it. Before Office Space, Gary Cole was best known as the villainous Sheriff Lucas Buck in American Gothic, and as Mike Brady in the Brady Bunch movie. Neither role suggested he could make passive-aggressive corporate micromanagement feel like a recurring nightmare. When the production sent him the script, they included a video cassette of Judge's animated Milton shorts, the only existing visual reference for Lumbergh. Cole watched the tape. He heard Judge voicing the animated character, that particular crawl of a cadence, each sentence descending to an airless stop, the K that makes every request feel like a polite threat from the end of a long hallway. Cole's own account of his preparation was plain. Steal everything Mike Judge did. Not an impression, a translation. Judge said afterward that Cole made the character 10 times funnier. What Cole locked in immediately was that Lumbergh must never change temperature. Not when something goes wrong, not in Peter's nightmare. Lumbergh at a birthday cake looks exactly like Lumbergh discussing TPS reports. Same cadence, same warmth, which is no warmth at all. There was a cut scene where Lumbergh's Porsche gets towed and he reacts with visible anger. Cole lobbied personally to remove it. His argument: the moment Lumbergh shows frustration, the spell breaks. An angry Lumbergh is just a villain, a Lumbergh who responds to everything, up to and including chaos, with that same slow, placid delivery, is something you can't shake. The cut was made. The spell held. Number 10, Jennifer Aniston's subplot didn't exist until she was cast. Fox needed a name they could put on a poster. The film cost $10 million, the director was known for Beavis and Butthead, and the lead was an actor whose biggest credit was being the third friend in Swingers. Their position was clear: one recognizable face, or this doesn't get made. The script went to Jennifer Aniston. It was 1998, and she was one of the most famous people in the country. She agreed because she liked the script. Smaller character-driven roles weren't coming through normal channels, given what Friends had done to her career options. Livingston joked later that she probably assumed she was signing on opposite Matt Damon. She was not. The Flair subplot didn't exist when she agreed. The entire Tchotchke's arc, Joanna's boss interrogating her about the minimum button count, the 15-piece minimum, all of it, was written after Aniston was cast, created specifically to justify Fox's requirement. A marketing afterthought invented to satisfy a studio note about screen time. Aniston shot her entire role in about 2 weeks, fitting it between Friends tapings. That afterthought became one of the most quoted things in the film, a line people were still repeating in actual restaurants 20 years later. The studio asked for a face they could put on a poster. What they got without planning it was the scene that defines the movie's second act. Sometimes the most cynical decision in a production accidentally produces the thing everybody remembers. Number 9, the studio tried to kill the gangsta rap. An audience member shut that down. Tom Rothman, running 20th Century Fox Film Group, watched the first cut of Office Space and delivered a verdict. The gangsta rap has to go. Judge pushed back. The Ghetto Boys were from Houston. The film was set in Texas. And more to the point, these are soft-spoken, technically employed people who spend their lives doing the opposite of everything gangsta rap celebrates. Putting "Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangsta" under Peter's liberation montage, and "Still" under 3 guys executing a printer in a field, wasn't irony. It was the thesis. The rage in those songs was the rage the characters couldn't say out loud in a conference room. Rothman pushed harder. Judge offered one condition, one more focus group. If the audience disliked the music, he'd cut it. At the screening, the moderator, who Judge described years later at a SXSW panel as visibly working toward a predetermined conclusion, tried every angle. She asked what they thought of the music. 20 people said great. She asked about the rap specifically. Great, great. She asked if maybe there were too many rap songs. Nobody moved. One audience member finally gave her the answer she wasn't looking for. That's what's cool about it. These nerdy white boys and the music's angry. The rap stayed. The original trailer, which had been cut with Fatboy Slim's The Rockefeller Skank, was scrapped. The studio's biggest creative objection became the film's most imitated element, and a soundtrack that nearly got sanitized into nothing is now permanently associated with Office Rebellion. Number 8. The red stapler didn't exist. It was invented with a spray can. Prop master Stan Gilbert had a specific problem. Mike Judge wanted Milton's stapler to be red. It needed to pop against the gray backdrop, and Stephen Root, already dealing with severe visibility issues from Milton's lenses, needed something he could reliably locate on a desk. Red was the answer. There was no red Swingline stapler. Swingline made their staplers in shades of gray and dark blue. When production reached out looking for a partner, Bostitch said no, Boston said no. Swingline was the only company willing to cooperate, but they didn't make red either. So Gilbert took a standard Swingline, built up the hump with body filler to make it more bulbous, grabbed a spray can, painted it red, repositioned the logo. He made 10 of them. Total cost, almost nothing. 3 years later, after the cult following emerged, after letters to Swingline started arriving, after people were buying spray-painted counterfeits on eBay because nothing official existed, Swingline launched the Rio Red 747 model. It is now their second best-selling product, behind only the standard black 747. Every new U.S. Swingline employee receives one on their first day. 2 companies said no in 1998 and got nothing. The one that said yes built a revenue stream that's still running, and the stapler that started all of this was painted in a prop shop for the cost of a can of spray paint, because a half-blind actor needed to find it on his desk without being able to see clearly. Number 7. The printer scene was a mob hit. The idea predates the script by years. While writing Beavis and Butthead Do America, Judge's own printer kept breaking. He told his co-writer Joe Stillman that when the project was done, he was taking it to a field, destroying it, and filming the whole thing. That image became the center of Office Space before anything else existed around it. On set, Ajay Naidu described the sequence as a mafia hit. Livingston was the Don, circling behind the printer, while Naidu and Herman delivered the actual blows with bat, feet, and fists. He orchestrated. He didn't get his hands dirty. Years after filming, Naidu met some actual organized crime figures at an event in New York. They recognized him from the film. He asked what they thought of the printer scene. They told him it was authentic. And then there's PC Load Letter. Herman had more lines scripted for the scene where the printer first jams. During filming, the actual printer jammed and displayed its real error message. Herman genuinely didn't know what it meant. He said, with real bewilderment, "What the hell does that mean?" Judge kept the take. "The error means the paper cassette needs letter-size paper loaded." It was always that simple. But the message was designed for a 2-character display on early laserjet printers, so 4 words came out that sounded like a malfunction in a foreign language. Herman's confusion was entirely real. The most quoted line from that scene was written by a printer. Number 6. The film flopped. Then Madonna called. Office Space opened on February 19th, 1999, in 1,740 theaters. 8th place. Fox pulled it from 75% of screens in early March after one weekend that barely cleared $1 million. By late March, less than $40,000 coming in from 75 remaining screens, it was gone. Final domestic gross, $10.8 million on a $10 million budget. Technically not a loss, not remotely a success. A Fox executive told Judge directly, "Nobody wants to see a movie about ordinary people and their boring little lives." Then Comedy Central started airing it. People rented it on VHS. Judge overheard strangers talking about it at a Blockbuster in Austin. Didn't introduce himself, just listened. Actors started getting recognized on the street. And the calls started coming. Chris Rock left Judge a voicemail saying he had to make another movie because everyone was going to steal his ideas. Judge kept that message for years. Jim Carrey reached out wanting to meet, had never worked with Judge but loved the film. Amy Heckerling, David Zucker, John Landis, and then Madonna wanted to meet. She took Judge to dinner and said her favorite character was Michael Bolton because of something she found genuinely attractive about how angry he got. By 2003, Fox was asking about a sequel. Judge said if someone had told him that on opening weekend, he would have assumed they were making fun of him. Number 5, Mike Judge turned down The Office. The reason is almost too perfect. A few years after Office Space found its cult following, NBC sent Judge a package, DVDs of Ricky Gervais' British Office and press materials about the American adaptation they were developing. Judge picked up the first press clipping. It said, "The Office succeeds where movies like Office Space failed." He threw the package across the room. When people eventually convinced him to watch the British version, he loved it, said so without reservation, and when asked whether he regretted passing on the American adaptation, he'd had such a rough experience making Office Space, fighting the studio at every turn, watching it fail in theaters, that he couldn't bring himself to go back. The project went to Greg Daniels, his co-creator on King of the Hill. Daniels made The American Office into one of NBC's biggest sitcoms ever. 9 seasons. The man who invented the modern workplace comedy on film passed on what became the defining workplace comedy on television. And the review that made Judge throw the package across the room was completely wrong. The Office succeeded precisely because it followed the DNA Office Space had built. The mundane setting, discomfort played completely straight. The specific texture of corporate life treated with absolute seriousness. Judge built the house. Daniels moved in. The review is still on the floor. Number 4. The Flair guy sued Fox. Remember Brian, the tchotchke's waiter who wore 37 pieces of Flair with a smile that suggested he genuinely hadn't considered any alternatives? He was played by actor Todd Duffy. Duffy later filed suit against 20th Century Fox, claiming the studio had used his likeness without permission on a tie-in product called the Office Space Box of Flair, a kit containing 15 actual Flair buttons and a parody guidebook with Duffy's face on the cover. His legal claim was a false endorsement under the Lanham Act. He argued Fox had no right to put his face on merchandise without cutting him in. The production company's lawyers opened his contract. Duffy had signed a standard day player agreement with Cubicle Inc., the film's original production company, which later assigned all rights to Fox. The relevant clause granted the studio, and this is verbatim from the court filing, all rights throughout the universe to Duffy's performance, not worldwide, not in all territories. throughout the universe. The judge found the language unambiguous and dismissed the case in 2014. The actor who played the embodiment of mandatory corporate enthusiasm got legally flattened by the most corporate contract clause imaginable. The irony writes itself. Somewhere in the multiverse, per the terms of his agreement, Fox still owns his performance. Number 3, he cast deliberately sabotaged the film's rating. Midway through production, word reached the cast and crew that Fox was hoping to cut the film down to a PG-13. The studio's logic was straightforward: broader rating, broader audience, more ticket sales. David Herman's response was equally straightforward. He started adding profanity to every scene he was in, not a little. As many as he could physically fit. His word for it: stuffing. "I would stuff as many blue things as I possibly could between things," Herman said in The Hollywood Reporter's 25th anniversary piece, just so that was never going to be a possibility. He later confirmed that the R rating Office Space ultimately received was, when you look it up on Common Sense Media, due specifically to language. His additions, Mike Judge quietly approved. The whole team understood that sanitizing the film would kill it. The profanity wasn't decorative. It was the register of actual frustration. No one trapped in corporate hell curses politely, while a printer jams for the 15th time that morning. The sabotage worked. The R rating held. And without Herman's deliberate intervention from inside the dailies, Office Space might have been released as the kind of inoffensive family-friendly comedy about workplace misunderstandings that Fox was apparently hoping it would become, which would have been the most Office Space outcome of all. Number 2, Stephen Root was effectively blind. The entire shoot. Milton's glasses, thick, smudged, the lenses of a man who has stopped trying to see the world clearly, were a deliberate choice Mike Judge kept pushing further on the prop department. Thicker. He wanted them to look medically severe. Stephen Root had to wear them. He wore contact lenses underneath just to approximate basic spatial awareness. Even with contacts, zero depth perception. Every time Root had to reach for the stapler or interact with any object on his desk, he rehearsed the exact position beforehand. Because without that rehearsal, he genuinely could not find it. At the 2024 SXSW anniversary panel, Judge told Root he just kept asking the prop department for thicker and thicker lenses. Root's answer was precise. "I had no depth perception. Every time I had to reach for something, I had to practice because I had no clue." The character who is more aware of the exact location of his possessions than almost anyone in film history, who notices every time the stapler moves, who tracks it across the entire movie, who burns the building down because nobody would leave it alone, was played by an actor who literally could not see the stapler without memorizing where it was first. Number 1, the director has never watched his own movie. In March 2024, Mike Judge sat on a panel at South by Southwest for the 25th anniversary of Office Space. Someone asked if there was anything he'd change. He mentioned, almost as an aside, that he hadn't seen the film since before its release in 1999, not once. Ron Livingston, sitting right next to him, looked visibly surprised. Judge knows fans have watched it 40, 50, 100 times, that people quote it in actual offices, that it plays on a loop somewhere at any given moment. He'd started it a few times over the years, watched the first 15 minutes, and each time thought, nah, I'm gonna go do something else. He fought the studio over the casting, over the wrap, over the poster, over Livingston's face. He watched it open in 8th place. He sat with the executive who told him nobody wanted this. And then he watched it slowly become exactly what he'd believed it was, while the people who doubted it took credit for its existence. At some point, he stopped re-engaging with any of it. And weirdly, that's the most Office Space thing in this entire list. The film is about a man who simply stops showing up, who disengages so completely that the company promoting him and the company that wants to fire him become equally irrelevant. Peter Gibbons doesn't rage or fight. He just opts out and finds that the whole machine keeps running without him. Mike Judge made that film, and then, with the machine running, he opted out too. He already knew how it ended. He didn't need to watch it again. And there you have it. 15 facts about Office Space. A film that flopped in February 1999, found its people on cable and VHS, turned a spray-painted prop into a real product line, changed a restaurant chain's dress code, inspired an actual heist attempt, got its rating saved by deliberate profanity, and was made by a man who hasn't watched it since the moment it left his hands. Which facts surprised you most? Let us know in the comments and hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until next time.